When the millionaire walked back into his home, what he saw by the kitchen sink changed everything in a single heartbeat. A silent child suddenly speaks, and an invisible war begins. Cold optics and money versus one tiny miracle on a step stool. Who wins, status or love? Don't skip a second. The twist at the end will shock you. If this grabs you, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us which country you're watching from. Let's begin. The sun was slipping behind Chicago's skyline when Daniel Carter left the Loop boardroom 30 minutes into a pitch he'd spent weeks preparing. For 6 months, nothing added up. Not the commas in his contracts, not the square footage of his towers, not the shine of the new Aston sitting useless in his garage. His 3-year-old daughter, Emily, hadn't said a word since the night a drunk driver ran a red light and took Rachel from both of them. The specialists at Lurie Children's called it trauma-linked selective mutism. Time, patience, routine, they'd said, as if those were items he could order and have installed like marble countertops. Something, instinct, dread, a thread he couldn't name, pulled him home early. He came in through the mudroom, past Emily's little Cubs cap hanging from a hook, and stopped at the kitchen door. The renovation had been Rachel's dream. A wall of windows, warm oak floors, a farmhouse sink that made Daniel complain about splash marks until she laughed and kissed him quiet. Now the room was alive again. Emily stood on a sturdy step stool at the sink, sleeves rolled, hands lost in a mountain of suds. Beside her, Maya Rivera, 20-something, dark hair in a messy bun, wearing a faded northwestern sweatshirt under her apron, guided Emily's small wrists in gentle circles. "Scrub the brave plates first," Maya said, voice a soft sing-song. "They did all the hard work," Emily giggled. The sound broke the air like church bells in a dead town. "Can I make bubbles, Aunt Maya?" she whispered, clear enough that Daniel's grip slipped off the doorframe. He hadn't heard her voice in 183 days. The room tilted. He pressed a hand to the cool trim to steady himself. Maya looked up and startled, nearly slipping an elbow against the faucet. "Mr. Carter, I didn't hear you come in," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Emily went rigid, like a deer when a branch snaps. Her eyes darted to him and then down, as if she'd been caught stealing sunlight. "It's okay," Daniel managed. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't," Maya said gently. "Herm, can you show your dad how you rinse the brave plates?" Emily didn't move. She pressed her lips together and tucked her chin, the smile swallowed whole. Daniel's heart sank through the soles of his shoes. "I'll, be in my office," he said, and escaped before the crack in his voice widened. He shut the office door and poured coffee he didn't want. His hands trembled. The mug clinked against the saucer, the way Rachel used to scold him for. How had a girl he'd hired to keep the house from falling apart managed in a handful of months to reach the place? No degree, no appointment, no check had touched. Why could Emily speak to Maya but freeze at the sight of her father? He stared at the framed photo on his bookshelf, Rachel barefoot on the kitchen island mid-renovation, holding blueprints with both hands like a cape, Emily a newborn burrito in a sling on her chest. Rachel had teased him once. "You measure everything, Dan. Maybe love's the one thing you're not supposed to measure." Voices drifted down the hall. Maya's steady, patient tone. "These are circles like the moon." Emily softer. "And this one is a star." "Like Mummy's ring," he swallowed hard. The ring was in the safe, where he kept documents and things he didn't know how to touch. A knock. He straightened as the door opened an inch, and the house manager's face appeared. Evelyn Whitaker, 62, the woman who'd ironed his prom shirt and later arranged Rachel's funeral reception with military precision. "You're home early," she said, cool as a steel sink. "Everything all right?" "Fine." Her eyes flicked to the laptop, to his hands, back to his face, reading him the way only someone who'd known him since acne could. "The young woman has Emily at the sink again," Evelyn said. "I've told her the kitchen is not a playground." She was laughing, Daniel said, and surprised himself with the edge in his voice. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Children laugh. It doesn't mean they're healed. When she left, the office felt smaller. Daniel sank into his chair and pulled up his calendar. The neat blocks of meetings, flights, site visits. The illusion of control. He closed it and opened a blank note. He typed, backspaced, typed again. "I don't know how to be her dad without her mom here. Down the hall the water shut off. Tiny footsteps padded across hardwood. Maya's voice again, night-night song. Emily hummed a tune Rachel used to sing, the words still hiding but the melody brave. Daniel pressed his palms over his eyes until stars flashed purple. He couldn't be the stranger in his own house. He couldn't outsource his daughter's heart and call it love. But he also couldn't ignore the only person who'd lit a wick in Emily's dark. The next morning, he kissed Emily's hairline and told her he'd be late at the office. He drove 3 blocks, parked behind a church, and walked home with his collar turned up against the lake wind. He let himself in through the side door and crept upstairs to the office, leaving it cracked to hear the house breathe. From the kitchen came the scrape of a stool, the rhythm of a game. "Count with me," Maya said. 1 carrot, 2 carrots? 3, Emily whispered, and clapped once, quick and proud. Daniel opened his laptop and stared at the empty note. He didn't need another business plan. He needed a way in. He wrote 3 lines. Find out what happens here when I'm gone. Learn how to join it without breaking it. Don't let fear make the decisions. He sat back, listening to his daughter name the world in a voice he'd been afraid was gone. For the first time in months, Daniel wasn't thinking about the view from the penthouse or the return on a parcel in Fulton Market. He was thinking about a kitchen sink, a step stool, a patient song, and the terrifying possibility that the key to his child's healing was already inside his home. He closed the laptop, took a breath that hurt, and made a decision he knew Evelyn would hate and Rachel might have loved. Today he wouldn't knock on the kitchen door. Today he'd learn to listen. The next day, Daniel executed a plan that would have embarrassed the version of himself who believed money solved everything. He left in a suit, waved to Emily over his coffee mug, and told Maya he'd be late. 3 blocks away he parked behind St. Bridget's, bought a small bag of screws from the hardware store on the corner, and walked home in the wind that came off Lake Michigan like a blunt instrument. He slipped in through the side door during the morning shuffle, Evelyn taking inventory on a clipboard, the landscaper's blower murmuring outside, the dryer thumping somewhere deep in the house. In his office he opened a drawer and took out 2 tiny nanny cams he'd overnighted, matte black buttons with wide glassy pupils. He wasn't proud. He also wasn't willing to keep guessing. He mounted one in the den bookshelf behind a row of hardcovers and another high on the kitchen soffit where the beadboard met painted plaster. The kitchen camera's LED winked off. The room snapped back into itself, lemon oil, dish soap, light pooling on the island. He felt like an intruder in his own house, then remembered he'd been one for months. Except to the mortgage company, from noon to 5, he sat at his desk with the audio feed in one earbud, the video minimized in a corner. Real work swam by. Emails, a term sheet, a courier at the door with samples of stone for a lobby he no longer cared about. The house made a new kind of sense in a timeline he could finally see. At 12:14 p.m., Maya set Emily up at the island with a little wooden knife and a banana. "We only cut soft things." "Soft things are for helpers," Maya said. "Hard things are for grown-ups with big muscles and boring elbows." Emily giggled. "Boring elbows? Exactly. Those elbows can go to a meeting." "Meeting," Emily repeated, whisper soft like a secret she was trying on. At 1:02 p.m., Maya folded laundry and narrated colors. Blue like the lake, green like the park, yellow like the bus we waved to. "What color is this?" "Purple," Emily said, louder than a whisper, small hands lifting a pair of socks that had lost their mate. "Purple like Daddy's tie," Maya added, "the one he wears when he's brave." Daniel glanced down at his navy tie and laughed once, dry and startled. He hadn't owned a purple tie in his life. At 2:26 p.m. they cooked. Maya measured flour into a bowl and slid the cup to Emily. "This is one. If we add another one, how many ones make a 2? 2. A clap. 2. "Math magician," Maya said, and Emily's body language uncurled as if the words were a blanket. At 3:03 p.m., a different voice, firm, older, clipped, cut across the sink sounds. "The kitchen is not a classroom," Evelyn said, "and the child should not be on a stool without someone spotting her. You will ask permission before changing the routine." Maya lowered her voice but didn't surrender it. "We are within arm's reach, Miss Whitaker, and she's talking. That's the routine I'm after." "Talking to you," Evelyn said. "Not her father." The audio glitched with the tap of a finger near the mic. When it smoothed out, Daniel heard the chair legs scrape. Emily's little no was so small it might have been a squeak. "Ms. Whittaker," Maya said, calmer now, "I want him to have all of this. I'm not taking it from him. I'm trying to build a bridge he can walk across." "A bridge is still a boundary," Evelyn replied, "and in this house the adults set them." Silence. Then softly, the clack of a measuring spoon against stainless steel, and Maya's warm cadence returned. "Circles and stars, Em. Which one do we bake first?" By 5, Daniel's note had grown. She mirrors, labels, and waits. Never pushes. She turns every task into a choice. Evelyn will fight her with the kind of love that knows only rules. That evening, he came down like a man pretending he hadn't watched the day unfold on a screen. Emily was on the rug with blocks, engineering a precarious tower that leaned toward the vent. Her face lit when Maya said, "Daddy's home," then shuttered when he actually appeared, as if the word was safer than the man. "Hi, Peanut," Daniel said, lowering himself onto the floor, knees popping like popcorn. "What are we building?" Emily pressed a blue block into place without looking up. Maya, sitting cross-legged beside her, tipped her head toward Emily's shoulder, a cue Daniel had watched all afternoon. "Em," Maya said, "do you want to show Dad the garage?" Emily tapped the structure with the block. "Garage?" she whispered. "For cars," Daniel tried, easing a little metal sedan along the edge. "And brave plates." Maya hid her smile in her sleeve. Emily's eyes flicked toward him, the speed of a hummingbird's second thought. He didn't push. He let the car hum. He let the moment be. The next morning, a call came from the daycare they'd enrolled Emily in for a couple of hours a day. Daniel took it on speaker while riffling through a stack of site plans. "Mr. Carter?" The teacher's voice was bright and breathless. "I wanted to share some good news." Emily narrated her snack time today, like actually narrated it. 2 crackers, 1 apple slice. "More water, please." And she built a house in the block area and told 2 girls it was Aunt Maya's kitchen. Daniel's hand stilled at the name. "She spoke?" "2 other children? And an adult, me. She told me the blue blocks were lake color. That's a leap." He swallowed, throat thick. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you for telling me." He hung up and stood very still. Joy arrived wrapped in something sour and hard to name. Gratitude, yes. Jealousy, yes. Fear, absolutely. Of how fragile it all felt, like a glass bird balanced on his palm. At 4 that afternoon, the backyard camera caught a storm rolling in from the west. The maple leaves turned their pale undersides, and the air smelled like pennies. Maya took Emily outside in rain boots to count worms along the flagstone path. When the first drop hit, Emily squealed and stuck out her tongue to catch the second. It was the most carefree Daniel had seen her since the hospital. Then the sliding door opened. Evelyn stepped onto the patio, arms folded, jaw set. Inside, now, Emily flinched. Maya scooped her up and tucked the little body against her hip. "We're 5 steps from the door. We're safe. This is science." "It's disobedience," Evelyn said. "I've told you, no changes without permission." "I'm not changing anything. I'm naming the sky. If you want to be a teacher, Miss Rivera, go be a teacher. This is a house, not a school." Something inside Maya flashed, anger or grief or a lifetime of being told to shrink. It blew past in a blink, and when she spoke again, her voice was measured. "With respect, Ms. Whittaker, this house is a home. Homes are where kids learn their words for weather and fear." Lightning stitched the sky 3 blocks away. Emily startled, then buried her face in Maya's shoulder, small fingers fisting fabric. Daniel was already moving, but he paused in the doorway when he heard it, a sound he'd begged the universe for, carved out of everything and sent back. "Don't," Emily cried, loud and broken. "Don't take Aunt Maya away, please, please." The plea rang through the yard, pure and terrible, and both women froze. Evelyn's eyes softened, history warring with habit. Maya kissed Emily's temple. "I'm not going anywhere," she breathed, though her eyes slid to the house like she knew promises were dangerous here. Daniel stepped out into the damp air. "Inside," he said, but not to end the moment. To move it somewhere warm. In the kitchen, he set Emily on the counter and handed her a towel to pat her boots. He turned to Evelyn and Maya, feeling the weight of 2 types of loyalty pulling in opposite directions. "I heard what happened," he said, and held up a palm when both women started to speak. "I'm not interested in who was technically right." "Mr. Carter," Evelyn began. "I am interested," he said, gentler, "in what is right for my daughter." Emily is talking again. She is playing again. Today she begged for someone she trusts not to disappear. That matters more than process. Evelyn swallowed. The clipboard at her side looked like a shield she suddenly found too heavy. I have only ever protected this family, she said, voice thin. I know, Daniel said. You protected me when I was a stupid kid, and when I was a useless husband, and when I was a wrecked widower. But protecting us now might mean protecting this exact chaos. Maya stood very still, as if one wrong movement would send the room spinning. If I'm making things harder... You're not, Daniel said too quickly. He blew out a breath. You're making them different. Different is terrifying, but Emily needs different. He lifted Emily off the counter, and she folded into him, damp boots dangling against his thighs. She smelled like rain and soap and flour. She tucked her face under his jaw the way she used to when Rachel was the anchor to both of them. Daddy, she whispered so quietly he almost missed it. He closed his eyes. Yeah, Peanut. Can Aunt Maya read the moon book? He opened his eyes to Maya's, and something unclenched in both of them. Yeah, he said. Yeah, she can. That night, after the story about a moon that wasn't always full but was always whole, he stood in the doorway and watched Maya trace circles on Emily's back until the little body sank into sleep. Evelyn passed by with a folded throw, and after a long hesitation draped it at the foot of Emily's bed. When Daniel met her eyes, she lifted her chin a fraction, less surrender than truce. Downstairs, the storm softened to a steady hush. Daniel poured 2 glasses of water, handed one to Maya, and leaned against the island Rachel had chosen. I installed cameras, he said, the words dropping like stones. To see what I was missing. Maya's eyebrows rose, then settled. And what did you see? Someone who knows how to listen to my kid. Someone who makes math out of bananas and courage out of soap bubbles. She looked at the sink, at the step stool, at the space that had become their map. It's not magic, she said. It's time. Naming things, letting her lead and then following like you meant to go there. He nodded. Teach me to follow. Maya studied him for a long breath. Okay, she said. But there are rules. Of course there are, he said, half a smile. What's rule 1? Rule 1, she said, tapping the island for emphasis. No purple ties. You can't be brave and boring at the same time. He laughed, a real one this time, and felt the room expand by an inch. Upstairs, in the almost quiet, the moon book slid to the floor with a soft thud. In the den, the nanny cam's tiny eye watched an empty doorway. And in Daniel's chest, for the first time in half a year, something like weather passed and something like spring stayed. 2 days after the storm, Daniel woke with a plan that wasn't a plan so much as a dare to himself. Make a memory with Emily that didn't depend on Maya, not instead of her, alongside her. He found a flat of starter roses at a garden centre on Armitage, the kind Rachel used to linger over in spring. He chose one the colour of sunrise and one the colour of baseball stitching, and drove home with damp soil perfuming the car like summer. Daddy Day, he announced over waffles. Emily's eyes widened, suspicious and hopeful at once. We're planting something special in the yard. She glanced at Maya, who gave her a tiny nod. Like the moon book, Maya said. Things that change but don't disappear. Emily slid off her chair and tugged Daniel's sleeve. Red, she whispered, pointing at the flat. Like Mommy's. Love? He swallowed, the word catching and then clearing like a hiccup. Red it is. They kneeled in the backyard where the maple's shade softened the morning. Daniel showed Emily how to loosen roots, how to make a hole the right size, how to pat the soil like a blanket. Emily narrated in small, brave bursts. Roots sleep underground, she said. They drink with their toes. Exactly, Daniel said, glancing up at Maya, who watched from the porch with a mug and an expression that was somehow both proud and hands-off. Water, but not too much, Emily murmured, repeating an incantation he recognized now as Maya's. Too much makes them sad. They planted 2 bushes near the steps, then a third by the fence, a little crooked like the house had cleared its throat. When they finished, Emily pressed her palm into the dirt and lifted it to show him the print. My hand, she said, awed. It stays. He sat back on his heels, soil under his nails, a new ache in his chest that felt like good news. It stays. Before lunch, Daniel received a call that had him straightening in the kitchen. Mr. Carter, this is Dr. Nina Patel from Lurie Children's. I've been seeing Emily. I'd like to do a home observation this afternoon, if that's possible. Just an unstructured look at how she engages here. Yes, he said a little too quickly. Yes, come, he told Evelyn first. She adjusted her glasses and nodded with professional relief. Excellent. We'll tidy the common areas and set a quiet activity. Don't stage it, he said, gentler than his words. She needs to see what really happens. Evelyn stiffened. What really happens is that staff follow house rules. Daniel considered arguing and then chose his better self. What really happens, he said, is that Emily's getting better. Let's not scare that away. At 2:30, Dr. Patel arrived. 50s, sensible flats, ink smudge on a finger like she'd been grading papers. She shook Daniel's hand in the foyer and went down to Emily's level with ease, introducing herself like you would to a colleague. I'm Nina, she said. Can you show me your favorite spot in the house? Emily hid behind Daniel's leg, then peeked around it and pointed toward the kitchen. Sink, she whispered. Excellent taste, Dr. Patel said. Mine too. In the kitchen, Emily climbed onto her step stool like a climber claiming a summit. Maya set out cookie dough and a tray, and without fanfare started naming shapes as she rolled. Circle like the sun, Maya said. Square like our window, Emily said, voice small but steady. Triangle like pizza, Emily shouted, then clapped a hand over her mouth as if she'd broken a law. Dr. Patel didn't look at Daniel. She looked at Emily. That was a good loud, she said. The kind of loud we use for pizza. The next 20 minutes felt like watching a lock turn inside a door. No magic tricks, no coaxing. Just Maya shaping the air so Emily could step into it. When Emily hesitated, Maya named the feeling without fixing it. When Emily spoke, Maya gave the words a place to land. Dr. Patel scribbled notes and then occasionally didn't, which Daniel suspected mattered more. Evelyn hovered at the threshold, arms folded but eyes a little watery, as if the part of her that catalogued risk had been forced to take a seat and watch. When Emily ran to fetch a book and the kitchen fell quiet, Dr. Patel turned to Maya. What's your background? She asked, conversational more than clinical. Maya tucked a stray hair behind her ear. I studied early childhood development at Northeastern Illinois, she said. I didn't finish the master's. My mom got sick. I moved home and started working wherever I could. Evelyn's head tilted a millimeter. Daniel felt the shift, subtle as a draft. The moment a question becomes an audit. Any training specifically in grief with young children? Dr. Patel asked. Mostly the kind you don't choose, Maya said softly. We lost my mom when my little brother was 9. He didn't speak for a while either. My abuela taught me to let the house be loud around him until he found his own volume again. Dr. Patel smiled, a real thing that reached her eyes. You've got good instincts. You wait, you reflect. You follow the child's lead. That's a secure base. Daniel exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd trapped. The phrase, secure base, went on a shelf in his mind with other important objects. Rachel's ring, Emily's first ultrasound, the deed to the house. After the cookies and the shapes, and a chapter of a moon who was never the same shape twice, Dr. Patel asked to speak privately with Daniel in his office. Evelyn drifted behind them like a ghost of order. Daniel, Dr. Patel began, sitting in the same chair where contracts had lived and died. Emily's progress is exceptional. I don't use that word lightly. In 6 months, I'd expect small steps. In the last 2 weeks, she's made leaps. Is that? He swallowed. Is that safe? For it to happen so fast? It can be, she said, provided she has consistent, attuned adults. Your housekeeper, Maya, functions for Emily as a secure base. That doesn't erase you. The bridge she's building can lead to you. Evelyn, at the edge of the carpet, cleared her throat. Is it healthy for a child to be so attached to an employee? Dr. Patel looked at her, not unkind. It's healthy for a child to be attached to whoever is safe. Children don't grade love by pay stub. They feel it by presence. Daniel's eyes burned. He blinked hard and nodded. I want to suggest, Dr. Patel went on, that you join the rituals Maya has already built. Kitchen time, small jobs, planting. Don't replace her. Add yourself. And keep boundaries. The adults should be the scaffolding, not the building. Evelyn set her clipboard on the desk like a chess piece. And the household rules? Hold the ones that keep Emily safe, Dr. Patel said. Let go of the ones that keep her small. After Dr. Patel left, the house seemed to listen to itself. Daniel found Maya in the pantry, restocking flour. He leaned in the doorway, hands in pockets. unsure if gratitude required a script. "She said you're a secure base," he blurted. Maya laughed once, startled. "For a second I thought you were going to say security risk. I'm pretty sure I already installed those," he said, meaning the cameras, the contracts, the habits. He scratched his jaw, buying words. "Will you teach me to do what you do?" "You don't need to do what I do," she said. "You need to do what only you can, but yes. We can start with not rushing quiet." "Not rushing quiet," he repeated, storing it next to secure base. Okay, they started that evening. Maya stood at the sink with her sleeves rolled, narrating the water like a TV sportscaster, and Daniel took the stool beside Emily like a rookie called up to the majors. He showed Emily how to rinse plates in slow circles. Emily tolerated him for exactly 3 plates, and then reached for Maya's wrist. Maya put Emily's hand back in the water and covered it with Daniel's. "Team," she said, simple as a label. 3 hands, 1 brave plate. Emily looked up at him, really looked, and didn't turn away. Later, while Emily drifted off with the moon book, Daniel walked Maya to the back steps to say thank you without an audience. The sky had that late Chicago glow that made everything look filmic. The alley, the trash cans, the neighbor's basketball hoop crooked as a halo. "I also have to ask you something," he said. The words like a slider he wasn't sure would break. "Evelyn mentioned she saw your resume. She says it's sparse." Maya's posture stiffened, then softened. "I didn't lie," she said. "I left out things that don't fit neatly in bullet points. I was a full-time daughter to a dying mother, a full-time sister to a scared kid, a full-time person with rent due. I learned more about kids from my kitchen table than I did from a lecture hall." He nodded, chastened by the neatness with which his question had tried to make a life fit on a page. "If she pushes you, if anyone does, send them to me." "Daniel," she said, and his name in her mouth warmed something in him he'd thought wintered over for good. "I don't need rescuing. I just need someone to stop moving the finish line." They stood in the easy quiet that happens when a house decides it will let itself be a home. Somewhere upstairs, a page turned. The roses outside lifted their faces to the last of the light. 2 days later, the truce wobbled. Evelyn intercepted a piece of mail, addressed to Maya Rivera, that had been forwarded from a shelter address on the west side. Daniel found her standing at the kitchen island with the envelope like a clue in a courtroom drama. "This came with today's post," Evelyn said, her voice low but charged. "Care to explain why our live-in housekeeper has been listing a shelter as her mailing address?" Maya entered with a basket of towels and froze. Color drained from her face and then returned in 2 bright spots. "Because I did for a while," she said, measured. "When my mom died and the landlord raised the rent, and my brother was still in school and I hadn't found a stable gig, I bounced between couches and the shelter and a sublet with a door that didn't lock. Then you hired me. Then things got steady." "You should have disclosed that," Evelyn said. "We are responsible for a child." Daniel felt the old reflex, liability, exposure, protect the asset, stir and then mercifully subside. He saw instead a different picture. A woman who had kept a boy afloat, who had turned dish soap into courage and flour into math, who had given his daughter back her voice. What would disclosure have changed? Maya asked, not defiant, just tired. "Would you have said no to a person who needed the job the most?" Evelyn's mouth flattened. "I would have ensured proper vetting." "You vetted her for months," Daniel said softly. "Every hour. Every breath Emily took in this house was part of your audit. And what happens when she leaves?" Evelyn shot back, staring at Maya like she feared the very fact of impermanence. "Because people do, and then Emily will shatter again." Maya's hand tightened on the towel basket. "I don't make promises I can't keep," she said. "But I also don't run at the first better offer. My brother's in a union apprenticeship now. We're not falling through floors anymore." Silence braided itself through the kitchen. The fridge hummed like a nervous habit. Somewhere a delivery truck sighed at the curb. "Enough," Daniel said, not unkind. "We're going to protect Emily by telling the truth in this house. The truth is that Maya helped pull her back to the surface. The truth is that I want to be part of the raft. The truth is that we're stronger if we stop pretending we've always been this stable." Evelyn looked at him, then at Maya, then down at the envelope, which she folded once and set aside, like surrender in stages. "Dinner's in 20, she said, and left the room with her spine straight but her edges less sharp. That night, Emily padded into the office in footy pajamas with stars on the soles and climbed into Daniel's lap without invitation. She smelled like baby shampoo and cookie crumbs. She pressed a sticker into his palm, holographic, heart-shaped, the kind Rachel would have put on a calendar for a random Tuesday win. "For you," she whispered, "because you planted brave roses." He looked at the sticker, at his daughter, at the door where Maya's shadow had just passed on her way to switch the laundry. He felt something settle, a beam across a span he hadn't known how to cross. "Thanks, Peanut," he said. "Tomorrow you show me how to rinse the brave plates again." She nodded, decisive. "3 hands," she said. "1 plate. Deal." Down the hall the moon book slid back onto the shelf with its friends. Outside the roses slept with their toes drinking in the dark. And in a house that had once been an exhibit of grief under glass, a father learned how to be scaffolding, a caregiver learned she didn't have to shrink to fit, and an old guardian began, against all her habits, to trust what she couldn't control. 2 weeks of small, ordinary miracles stitched themselves into the fabric of the Carter house. The roses took root. The brave plates shone. Emily's words arrived like birds, first cautious, then bold, then singing before breakfast. Daniel learned to slow his hands, to narrate the quiet, to wait the extra beat that let Emily step into a sentence. For even Evelyn, who once guarded order like a fortress, began setting out the step stool beside the sink before Maya could ask. On a Tuesday, daycare sent home a note written in crayon. "Family Day. Bring something that shows who's in your family." Emily traced the letters with a finger and looked up at Daniel, eyes bright and solemn at once. "Can I bring pictures?" she asked, louder than a whisper. "Of course," Daniel said. "Which ones?" She held up 3 fingers. "Mommy, Daddy, Aunt Maya." The room tilted a little, but not in the old dizzy way. Daniel's heart thumped a new rhythm. "Protect this at all costs. We'll make something special," he said. "A whole board." That night they spread photos on the dining table like a deck of treasured cards. Rachel in the kitchen with flour on her cheek. Emily in a Cubs onesie, with a bottle clenched like a tiny protest sign. Maya at the sink, hair in a messy bun, laughing off to the side while Emily misbuttoned an apron. Evelyn hovered in the doorway, pretending to dust the baseboards that were perfectly clean. "Here," she said after a moment, and brought an old Polaroid from the office. Rachel and Daniel standing in front of their gutted kitchen when the island was still plywood. Markers scrawled on the surface like a blueprint for a life. "It belongs." Maya met Evelyn's gaze and nodded, respect passing between them like a lit match cupped in 2 careful sets of hands. They titled the board with foam letters, "Our family is a home." Underneath, Emily placed a paper moon she'd cut herself jagged and perfect, and wrote in wobbly capitals, "Love changes shape but stays." 2 days later, at exactly 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. Evelyn, punctual to the second, frowned at the schedule and opened the door to a woman with a badge on a lanyard and a calm, practiced smile. "Good morning. I'm Carmen Ruiz with the Department of Children and Family Services," she said. "We received an anonymous call. I'd like to ask a few questions." The house stilled. Daniel came from the kitchen, tie forgotten around his neck. Maya stepped in from the garden with soil under her nails. Emily peered around the banister, thumb hovering near her mouth, then dropped when Maya's eyes found hers. "What's this about?" Daniel asked, his voice already lowering into defense. Anonymous caller reported concerns about the child being put in unsafe situations and a staff member overstepping her role, Ms. Ruiz said, professional, without being cold. "I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to see." Evelyn's spine straightened into old habits. "You'll want to see the kitchen," she said, already bristling at a judgment she hadn't yet heard. "There's a stool." Ms. Ruiz smiled a half-inch. "There's always a stool." They moved as a small procession. Daniel's heat, Evelyn's order, Maya's steady. Emily's small steps matched to Maya's. In the kitchen, the step stool sat squarely in its place. The sink shone. The counter held the bowl where cookie dough dreamed of becoming geometry. "Can you tell me about what you do here?" Ms. Ruiz asked, addressing Maya but watching how Emily's body arranged itself in the room. A kid's barometer for whether adults couldn't name. "We narrate," Maya said. "We let life be a lesson. We build small brave." "Show me," Ms. Ruiz said and stepped back. Maya washed her hands and offered Emily a choice. Apples or bananas? Apples, Emily said, and then braver, for triangles. Triangles it is, Maya said. She gave Emily the toddler knife and placed her own hand lightly over Emily's, naming the motions. Push, rock, rest. Your hand is the boss of the knife. Mine is the boss of your hand. Daddy is the boss of the kitchen. Emily giggled and glanced at Daniel as if to confirm his promotion. And your job? Ms. Ruiz asked Daniel, not missing the way Emily's shoulders lowered when he smiled instead of flinched. My job is to learn to be scaffolding, he said, and to keep my kid safe without shrinking her. Ms. Ruiz's eyebrows lifted, impressed despite herself. She turned to Evelyn. And yours? Evelyn looked at the stool at the sink, at the foam letterboard propped on the counter. My job used to be to keep everything spotless and quiet, she said slowly. Now it's to keep the floor dry and the adults' kind. Ms. Ruiz nodded once, then crouched to Emily's height. Do you feel safe here? Emily pressed apple slices into a little sun on the cutting board, then looked up, measuring the woman with the badge against all the voices in the room. I feel... She searched for Maya, who didn't speak, only put a palm flat on the counter. Here, I am here. I feel home, Emily said. They spent an hour walking through routines. Ms. Ruiz checked the backyard gate latch, peeked at the roses, scanned the playroom for hazards. She asked about schedules, who did bath time, what happened when Emily had a big feeling. She took notes when Maya described the feelings basket beside the couch, smooth stones with words painted on them. Mad, sad, scared, silly, brave. You label the feeling and then the next step? Ms. Ruiz prompted. We make room for it, Maya said. We don't hurry it out. Ms. Ruiz made a small sound of approval and closed her notebook. I'd like to see the cameras, she said, and Daniel's stomach dropped like an elevator. He told the truth. I installed two. I wanted to understand what I was missing. Maya knows about them now. Ms. Ruiz didn't ask for permission. Daniel offered it anyway. They watched a clip from the rain day. The worms, the squeal of the first drop, the lightning stitched into distant clouds, the moment Emily's plea split the air. Ms. Ruiz watched it twice. On the third pass, she watched Daniel's face in the reflection of the glass. Anonymous calls often come from fear, she said softer. Sometimes fear of change. Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She started, then stopped, choosing the braver sentence. I might have called, she said. I didn't, but I might have. 2 weeks ago I would have. Maya stared at the floor. I understand, she said, and meant it. Ms. Ruiz stood, slid her notebook into her bag, and clipped the badge back to her neckline. Here's what I see, she said. Voice now the kind you'd use to hand over a fragile thing. A child grieving, attached to her father, attached to a caregiver who is attuned and consistent. Protective factors high, risks managed. I'll file this as unfounded, with a recommendation that you continue therapy and keep doing exactly what you're doing. Daniel had to clear his throat twice before he could thank her. After the door closed, the house exhaled. Emily climbed the stool again and handed Maya a slice of apple shaped like a crooked star. For Aunt Maya, she said. For Brave. Evelyn set both hands on the back of a chair and looked older than her 62 years, and younger at once, as if laying something heavy down can subtract and add time in the same minute. I am sorry, she said to Maya, and the words had weight. I have used rules to keep from feeling scared. That is not the same as wisdom. Maya nodded, tears bright but contained. Rules kept me alive, she said. I just don't want them to keep Emily small. That evening they finished Emily's family day board. Emily insisted on including a new photo. The three of them at the sink, 3 hands on one plate. Evelyn snapped it with Daniel's phone, and when she looked at the image, something in her softened like butter catching sunlight. Family day arrived with the smell of school glue and hallway sanitizer. Daniel wore jeans and a sweater instead of a suit. Maya wore the purple scarf her abuela had knit. Evelyn came despite having no patience for chaotic bulletin boards, which turned out to be untrue. The classroom hummed with small voices and construction paper hearts. Parents knelt beside poster boards crowded with stick figures and pets, and grandparents with mismatched shoes. Emily stood on tiptoe to tape her moon to the top of the display. The foam letters glared like a headline. Our family is a home, and underneath pictures told the rest. Some parents glanced at Maya with that quick grown-up calculus. Who is she in this story? And Emily solved it without prompting. This is my dad, she told her teacher, pointing with authority. And this is my mom in the sky. And this is my Aunt Maya. Families can be three hands. A hush spread in a 10-foot radius and then broke into kind smiles, some awkward, some real. Mrs. Kim, the teacher, crouched. That is beautiful, Emily, she said. Thank you for teaching us. On the way out, a woman Daniel recognized from fundraisers, perfect blowout, pearl studs, sidled up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bold choice bringing the help to Family Day, she murmured, the syllables sugar-coated and poisonous. Daniel felt the old instinct to swallow it, to smooth it, to keep the peace in rooms where power ran underfoot like current. He looked at Maya, at Emily squeezing her hand, at the moon cutout listing slightly to the left. She's not the help, he said evenly. She's family. Maya didn't look at him. She squeezed Emily's hand back and watched the hallway sunlight catch dust motes dancing like confetti. The blowback arrived 48 hours later, not from the school but from Daniel's board. An email landed in his inbox with subject line, Optics, Dan. Several of us saw photos circulating from Family Day. While we support your personal journey, we'd remind you the firm's reputation is bigger than any one story. Crossing personal-professional lines with a household employee could be misconstrued. Investors are skittish. Let's keep a low profile. He didn't need the signature to know it came from Victoria Lane, his longest-standing partner, the kind who could ask you to buy a building and then ask you to knock it down in the same week with the same tone. He read it twice, then again felt the familiar tug of war between the life he'd built and the home he was finally learning to live inside. Maya found him at the dining table staring at his screen like it had insulted his daughter. You okay? She asked. Board politics, he said, shrug smiling, which fooled no one. Do I need to quit to make your life easier? Maya asked, and her voice was practical and lethal all at once, the way a person sounds when they've planned exits before they pack. No, he said, too fast. He pushed the laptop away as if it might bite. We just survived a state visit because you turned grief into language and fear into recipes. I'm not trading that for optics. Maya watched him, measuring the gap between his conviction and the world that would test it. Okay, she said, but her eyes stayed wary. The eyes of a woman who knows promises are heavy and the floor sometimes gives. That night, after Emily's moon book and the triple-hand plate rinse and a laugh that shook loose something that had been lodged under Daniel's ribs since the funeral, he found Rachel's old recipe box in the pantry. He brought it to the island and opened it like a vault. Chicken piccata, he said, reading Rachel's loopy script. She made this the night we found out Emily was a girl. Maya slid a cutting board toward him. Let's make it, she said. Teach me Rachel's version. I'll teach you mine. They cooked like two people telling a story in alternating paragraphs, his with capers and lemon, hers with extra parsley and patience. Evelyn tasted the sauce and, without being asked, reached for the salt. She always undersalted, she murmured, a fondness threaded through the grief. Said it made room for the lemon. They ate at the island Rachel had picked, under the pendant lights Daniel had argued against, and now loved the way you love the part of a person that always wins the small fights. Emily swung her feet and announced that the chicken tasted like sunshine. Later, when the house had tucked itself in and the dishwasher hummed the evening closed, Daniel stood by the back door and watched the roses nod in a light breeze. His phone buzzed. Another email from Victoria, short and sharp as glass. Dan, we're voting Friday on the River North deal. I suggest you show up alone. He stared at the words until they blurred into shapes, then into nothing. He pictured Friday, the conference room, the glass table, the view meant to impress the men and women who could move millions with a finger. He pictured Emily's foam letters. Our family is a home. Behind him, Maya's footsteps were soft. She joined him at the window, shoulder close but not touching. You don't have to be brave and boring at the same time, she said, calling back to a joke that wasn't a joke at all. I think I just have to be brave, he said. Then be, she said. We'll still be here when you come back. He didn't reach for her hand and she didn't offer it. Some promises don't need skin to hold. Upstairs, Emily rolled over and muttered in her sleep, a line from the moon book, different shapes still the same. The roses nodded like they understood. And somewhere on the other side of the city, An inbox lit up again with opinions about optics that had never once rinsed a brave plate. Friday came dressed like a closing argument. Grey sky, sharp wind, the city holding its breath. Daniel tied the only purple tie he owned now, bought 2 weeks ago as a dare, and kissed Emily's curls while she sleep-murmured about moons and cookies. On the island, the family dayboard leaned against a fruit bowl. Foam letters, a headline he could feel in his ribs. Our family is a home. The conference room on the 42nd floor was all glass and posture. The River North render glowed on a wall-sized screen, a mirror tower where a block of century-old brick still stubbornly stood. 12 partners, one agenda. Victoria Lane, hair precise as a blueprint line, presided. Let's get to it, she said. Term sheets are in your folders. We vote, we move, we don't bleed out in committee. They cycled through the easy parts. Timeline, debt stack, rooftop lounge angles that promised sunsets for people who never looked up. Then the slide flipped to a bullet that had already started fights in email. Community parcel. Acquisition, demo. Daniel felt it like grit in his teeth. That parcel wasn't just brick. It housed a half-day preschool and a battered women's legal clinic. Rachel had volunteered there before Emily. He could still see her coming home with ink on her, fingers and stories in her eyes. We're not in the philanthropy business, someone said. We are in the optics business, said someone else, and the optics are clean. When you write a check and cut a ribbon, Victoria said. Not when you date your housekeeper. The room pulled an invisible breath. Daniel stared at her, at the mirror tower that would reflect a city he didn't want to live in if it couldn't make room for the weak. I'm not dating anyone, he said evenly. I am raising my daughter, and I won't bulldoze the places that kept other people's daughters alive so we can sell more corner bedrooms. This is a vote about money. Not your redemption arc, a partner muttered. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket, a tremor he tried to ignore. It buzzed again. Evelyn's name lit the screen with a text that felt like a siren. Fire drill at daycare. Emily panicked. Maya's with her. She's asking for you, he stood. Victoria's mouth tilted. If you walk out, you lose your say. He looked at the rendering, beautiful, empty, and then at the window where the river cut the city like a second thought. He thought of a step stool, 3 hands on one plate, a voice that had come back to his house like a stray bird that wanted to stay. I'll take that risk, he said, and left his folder on the table like a person setting down a weapon. Daycare smelled like waxed floors and old crayons, the soundtrack a chorus of controlled chaos. In the quiet room off the main hall, Emily sat in a beanbag, knees to chest, hands over ears. The alarm had stopped. The echo hadn't. Maya knelt beside her, spine curved like a sheltering roof. 3 breaths, Maya murmured. Smell the flower, blow the candle. Emily's breathing stuttered. Daniel slid down beside them, tie askew, palms open, eyes level with his daughter's. Hey, Peanut, he said softly. Can I sit in your brave bubble? Emily's fingers unclenched. One hand landed on his tie, the other on Maya's sleeve. Don't leave, she said, the words scratchy from crying. Please don't leave. I won't, he said. Not now. Maya met his eyes over Emily's. Head, gratitude, relief. Something else that didn't have a name yet, because saying it this early would be greedy. They stayed until Emily's breaths matched the clock. In the hallway, the director pressed a hand to Daniel's forearm. She called you and Miss Rivera my team during the drill, she said. That's the first time she said that. Team, he repeated, as if repetition could solder the word to the moment. By the time Daniel reached the office again, the vote had happened without him. Victoria waited in his doorway, arms folded, expression readable only if you'd known her long enough to see the hairline fractures in ice. You lost the parcel, she said without preface. 9-3. We're buying it, we're demoing it, we're building the tower. He sat, the room suddenly smaller than the daycare's quiet room. And the other vote? He asked, though he hadn't been told there would be one. She didn't blink. On your judgment. On whether you can separate home from work. Did I fail? You weren't here to fail, she said. Which is a kind of answer. He let silence stretch. The city hummed beyond the window, indifferent and alive. Finally he asked, Did you make the anonymous call? Victoria's gaze didn't waver. No, she said. I thought about it, because I'm a coward sometimes, and because I am very good at protecting what keeps this machine running. But I didn't. Then who? She looked past him as if an answer lived on the wall. A donor's wife, maybe. A parent who decided your child's safety is theirs to police. It doesn't matter. They'll always be watching for a misstep. You don't give them one. He remembered the email, show up alone. He remembered the hallway woman with the pearl studs. He remembered Emily's hand on 2 sleeves at once. Small body choosing a team because the world would try to split it. I have a counter-proposal, he said, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. Keep the tower. Move the footprint 12 feet west. Preserve the brick. We write a master lease. Preschool and clinic get 10 years at $1 a year with an option. We build above and around them, like the city learned not to eat its own. We put Rachel's name on the plaza because she earned it washing dishes and reading law across a kitchen island. Victoria's laugh was a fragment. You're suggesting we wedge empathy into a pro forma. I'm suggesting we sell a story, he said. The one investors actually want now. Resilient neighborhoods, adaptive reuse, ESG that isn't a checkbox but a strategy. Also, I'm suggesting I'll buy anyone out who doesn't like it. You can't buy everyone out. I can buy you time to see it work. She weighed him, each scale marked with numbers he used to worship. You're asking me to gamble the deal on your child's recovery arc. I'm asking you to gamble on a city that remembers its people, he said. And if you need numbers, I'll bring you numbers. By Monday, she said. Or we pour the slab and your purple tie goes back in the drawer. He almost smiled. Deal. At home that night, Daniel spread survey maps across the island. Maya chopped carrots to pack for tomorrow's snack, narrating shapes to a rapt audience of 1. Evelyn brought out a tape measure, like it was a family heirloom. 12 feet is a lot and a little, she said, clicking the tape out and back with satisfying snaps. You'll need a transfer truss and a forgiveness clause. Forgiveness clause? Daniel asked. For yourself, she said, not looking up. In case it doesn't go like the movies. Emily toddled over with a triangle of carrot, face smeared with bedtime. This is a roof, she announced. For the brick house that doesn't fall down. Maya kissed the top of her head. Exactly. Saturday morning, Daniel took a legal pad to the preschool and measured daylight, setbacks, shadows. He bought coffee for the clinic's pro bono lawyers and asked for their busiest hours. He sketched a plaza that let strollers turn without bumping knees and a ramp that didn't feel like an afterthought. By noon, he had numbers. By dinner, he had a deck. By bedtime, he had a headache and a daughter asleep with a smooth stone clutched in her palm labeled Brave. Sunday at dusk, as the Cubs lost in 11 and the neighborhood's collective groan rolled down the block, a new email arrived from an address Daniel didn't recognize. Mr. Carter. We met Friday in the hallway. I owe you an apology. My help comment was unkind. I watched my son sit with your daughter at snack today and tell her triangles are just pizza wearing a disguise. She laughed. I haven't heard him make a friend in months. If you ever need someone to speak at a board meeting about how a caregiver can save a family, I'll come. Marisol Alvarez, room 2. Mateo's mom, Pearl's retired. Daniel read it twice, then carried his laptop to the back steps, where the air tasted like rain about to remember itself. Maya joined him with 2 mugs and a look that asked but didn't pry. Pearl's retired, he said, and passed her the screen. She read, smiled, exhaled. People can change, she said, or count triangles, he said. Which is the same thing sometimes. He didn't reach for her hand. He set his palm on the step near hers, close enough to share warmth without asking for it. The kitchen behind them glowed like a lighthouse. Upstairs the moonbook waited, memorized but never tired. Monday would come with glass rooms and hard questions, and a vote that would decide whether a block got to keep its heart. Tonight the roses breathed, and the house stayed soft around its people. Daniel looked at the woman who had turned his address back into a home, at the window where Evelyn's reflection moved like a quieter kind of weather, at the dark square of sky that belonged to Rachel and to anyone who needed a place to look up and feel held. Different shapes, he said. Still the same, Maya answered. Inside, the dishwasher hummed the evening toward sleep. Outside, the city blinked and waited. Above, the moon thinned to a perfect stubborn crescent, the part that looks like it's missing and is only changing. Monday arrived with the color of wet steel and the mood of a test you couldn't cram for. Daniel rode the elevator to 42, with a tube of plan rolls in one hand and a slim deck in the other. The numbers inside it rehearsed until they felt like muscle memory. In his pocket, Emily's smooth stone labeled Brave knocked against his phone with every floor. The conference room glared, City on 3 sides, Power on the 4th. Victoria sat at the head, hair pinned, eyes unreadable. A dozen partners settled, the clink of pens like a percussion section warming up. "Show us," Victoria said. Daniel unrolled the site plan and set the deck to the first slide. "We moved the tower footprint 12 feet west. Preserve the brick. Transfer truss here," he tapped. "So the preschool and clinic live under a suspended lobby. Net rentable area drops 2%. Construction cost rises 1.7. Now the offsets," he clicked. "Historic tax credits on the brick facade, federal and state. ESG-tied debt. I have 3 term sheets from funds that price 25 basis points under our current stack if we maintain community services in perpetuity. CRA allocation from First Lake Bank if we master lease the clinic at $1 a year, 10 years, with an extension option. Naming rights on the plaza, the Rachel Carter Community Court, pledged by 2 donors who liked their philanthropy to photograph well." He let that hang just long enough for someone to smirk. "No one did. Retail premium," he continued. "Heritage adjacency tests higher than glass to glass. We model a 7% lift on ground floor rents facing the preserved brick. Air rights monetization on the east lot. The church next door wants a gym. They'll buy 6,000 square feet of FAR if we cantilever. The cost becomes a narrative, and the narrative sells leases." He paused. "And it's right." A partner cleared his throat. "The schedule?" "Net zero slip," Daniel said. "We excavate west first while the brick's shored. Set the transfer steel early. Swing the lobby last. I've run contingency with 2 GCs. Both will bid." "And the board optics?" someone else asked, almost bored with their own cynicism. Daniel clicked to the last slide. It wasn't a graph. It was a photo, a poster board with foam letters, "Our family is a home," and a paper moon taped crooked at the top. You could see a tiny hand pressing it down, the sort of detail you wouldn't stage if you were lying. "Friday during your vote," he said, voice level, "I chose a fire drill over a conference table. I won't apologize. But I'm here today with math that respects money and a plan that respects people. We can build a tower without erasing the block it grows from. We can choose a story that doesn't require us to be the villain. Silence, the close kind." Victoria steepled her hands. "Let's hear the neighborhood." The glass door opened. Mrs. Kim from the daycare stepped in, nervous but steady. Behind her, 2 clinic lawyers with coffee breath and casework eyes. And Marisol Alvarez, Pearl's retired, holding a folder like a shield she was ready to lower. "I asked them here," Daniel said, before anyone could accuse him of theater. "They get 3 minutes each." Mrs. Kim spoke about classrooms that didn't echo, about kids who did better when their buildings did not disappear. The clinic lawyers spoke about women who needed an address to win a case. Marisol spoke last. "My son is 5, she said. He likes triangles because he calls them pizza in disguise. Your renderings are beautiful. Please don't teach our kids that beauty always wins against what keeps them safe." She stopped. No melodrama. Just a mother who had learned to be precise. Victoria let the quiet stretch, then looked around the table. Motion to adopt the Carter Plan as presented with the following conditions. Underwriting to validate the debt pricing. GC bids to confirm the transfer steel schedule. Council to draft the master lease. Community board to sign a memorandum of understanding. All contingent approvals unwind if the numbers don't land. Hands rose. "Not all, not none, enough." 7 in favor, Victoria said. 5 opposed. Motion carries, the room exhaled. Paper shuffled like a flock taking off. Victoria gathered her pen and looked at Daniel as the others stood. "You bought us a new kind of heat," she said. "If it burns, you own it." "If it warms the block," he answered. "We all live here." On the elevator down, his phone hummed with texts. "Evelyn, you did it?" "Maya." Emily picked a new stone. "Hope." He sent back a photo of the vote tally scribbled on his agenda and stared at the ceiling like it might be a sky he could thank. At home. The front door opened on the smell of lemon and rosemary. Maya looked up from the island. Hands flowered and didn't ask with words. He nodded. She grinned, small and bright and private. "Want to tell Emily?" she asked. "I want you to," he said, and Emily barreled in from the den, socks sliding. "What happened?" she demanded. "The way kids do when they know the room is holding its breath." "We kept the brick," Maya said, crouching to Emily's height. The school and the helpers stay. Daddy moved the big building so the little strong one can still be strong. Emily held up both hands like a ref after a touchdown. We made a roof for it, she said, grabbing a triangle of cardboard from the craft bin. She ran to the back door. Can we plant a sign? They made a fake plaque from a cereal box and a gold marker. Emily's Mum's Plaza, she lettered, then frowned, lips pursed, concentration fierce. I'll learn to spell Rachel, she promised, and Maya kissed the top of her head. Evelyn watched from the doorway, her expression a blend of pride and I told you nothing, and I love you anyway. Dinner in 20, she declared, which was her way of saying the world could change and the table would still be set. That night, after Emily's second reading of the moon book and a third trip for water because moons are thirsty, Daniel and Maya drifted to the back steps where the air was a little cooler and the roses held their end of the bargain by smelling like summer. Porch light made a halo of flower on Maya's sleeves. You were good in there, she said. I was loud with numbers, he said. And less loud with the truth. Those are the only 2 volumes anyone hears, she said, smiling. He turned the smooth stone in his pocket. They'll test us, he said. Investors. People who think grief is contagious. People who call agencies when they're scared of new shapes. Then we'll pass tests 1 plate at a time, she said. We already are. He didn't take her hand. He did move his knee until it touched hers, the smallest declaration, a punctuation mark instead of a paragraph. Tuesday struck back. An alert pinged his phone at 7:12 a.m. with the venom of a mosquito you can't swat. A local gossip blog post. Headline like a slap, Housekeeper replaces late wife? Featuring a long-lens photo of Daniel and Maya on the back steps, 2 mugs between them, her sleeve dusted with flour, his tie loosened, the porch light turning the scene domestic. The caption did the rest. His stomach dropped. He read too fast, then too slow. Words like inappropriate, power imbalance, child in the home. A cherry-picked line from his board email about optics. A blurred shot of the family day board, stolen from a parent's Instagram and repurposed like a prop. Evelyn saw his face from across the kitchen and didn't ask. She took Emily to the den with cartoons and an extra blanket, like she was moving the crown jewels to a vault. Maya set the bowl down, swallowed, and stood very straight. I can resign, she said, voice even. Today. You'll say you let me go months ago and that I'm consulting on the preschool so the story makes sense. It'll calm the money people. I'll find work. We will be fine. He shook his head before she finished. No? Daniel, she said, the word warning and tenderness both. This isn't a fire drill. The internet isn't kind. It will hurt your deal. It will hurt you. It will hurt Emily if you leave, he said. And it will say something to her about love that I refuse to say. He picked up his phone, then put it down, then picked it up again. We respond once, he said. With facts. With respect. Without feeding the thing. What facts? Evelyn asked from the doorway, half general, half grandmother. That we aren't in a relationship, Daniel said, and felt every syllable land between his ribs. He looked at Maya. Not yet, he added, quieter, honest, because he wanted to be the kind of man who didn't lie to make messes neat. That Maya is employed here with a clear contract and boundaries. That my daughter is thriving because a house became a home, and a caregiver became family. And that anyone who has rinsed a brave plate is welcome to discuss power with me. Evelyn's mouth twitched in a way that used to mean she'd say no, and now meant she might say yes. You'll need counsel, she said. I'll call our PR firm, he said. Call Mrs. Kim, Maya said. And Marisol. Let parents tell the truth that actually matters. They crafted a statement at the island, where most of their courage lived, from Daniel Carter. My daughter lost her mother. She also found her voice again in a home where many adults have shown up for her every day. Our housekeeper, Ms. Rivera, is part of that team. She is employed with professional boundaries and deep respect. I am not in a romantic relationship with her. My focus is the well-being of my child and the integrity of our work in this city. We will continue to build both with care. He hit send to the PR firm. They polished commas and left the bones. Mrs. Kim texted back within minutes, use my quote. A child's safety is measured by attunement, not gossip. Marisol posted a photo of Mateo and Emily building a lopsided blockhouse with the caption, Families can be 3 hands. Mind your own. By noon, the blog post had been replaced at the top of the feed by something shinier and meaner about someone else. By evening, A reporter from a real paper called to ask about the preservation plan and the master lease. When Daniel hung up, he sat at the island and let his shoulders drop the inch they'd been holding. Crisis averted. Evelyn asked, handing him a glass of water like it was a medal. Deferred, he said, honest, but not defining. They made pizza that night in triangles Emily proclaimed roof slices. After bedtime, Daniel opened Rachel's recipe box, fished out a blank card, and wrote in his worst handwriting, "House rules brave first, optics second." 3 hands, 1 plate. Different shapes, still the same. He stuck it under a magnet on the fridge and stood there until the words felt less like an aspiration and more like a map. 2 days later, Dr. Patel returned for a scheduled check-in. She watched Emily stack blocks and narrate feelings, and share a cookie with a solemnity that nearly undid Daniel. "She's building a self," Dr. Patel said afterward in the office. "Keep the adults steady." "We will," he said. That afternoon, the city emailed preliminary approval on the modified footprint, along with a list of conditions that would make a lesser person cry into a spreadsheet. Seismic detailing for the transfer steel. A revised egress path. A daylight study rerun. Daniel grinned like a lunatic at building code. "Twist," he told Maya at the sink. "The city wants an additional egress stair to the alley, so we give the alley a staircase that feels like a story," she said. "Light it like a page. Plant it like a sentence. People will use what you don't begrudge them." He didn't tell her he loved her answer. He told her he loved the way she thought in verbs. On Friday, Evelyn surprised them all with a cake. Frosting messy, letters slanting uphill. "Rachel Court." Probably. She set it down and looked at Maya. "I'm not good at changing," she said, hands folded like a prayer she hadn't finished. "But I'm getting better at watching it happen without calling the cops." Maya laughed, startled and grateful. "Highest compliment I've ever gotten from a house manager," she said. And they cut slices too big and ate them at the island under the pendant lights Rachel had chosen, everybody arguing gently about whether frosting should be salted. That night Daniel tucked Emily in. She pressed the brave stone into his palm. "You keep it," she said. "I have hope." He stood in the doorway after the moon book and listened to her breathing turn into sleep. Downstairs, Maya washed the last plate in slow circles, and Evelyn put the step stool away like she was tucking in a small, useful witness. In the yard, the roses had taken hold. In his inbox, city comments waited like puzzles he wanted to solve. On the fridge, a card with 3 rules shone under a magnet shaped like a lemon. He poured 2 waters and joined Maya on the back steps. They sat shoulder-close, quiet, whole not rushing the quiet. He thought of the word yet, and decided it was not a trap but a promise he didn't have to spend tonight. Above them, the crescent moon tipped like it was listening. The city breathed. The house stayed soft around its people. And Daniel, who had once measured his life in square footage and dollars per foot, counted in plates and stones and the 12 feet he'd moved a building so a block could keep its heart. Spring softened the city into a kinder version of itself. Steel thawed to silver. The river remembered how to sparkle. On site, cranes wrote cursive across the sky while welders stitched the transfer truss into place like a spine. The preserved brick below it wrapped in scaffolding that looked almost reverent. A mesh banner read, "Coming soon, Rachel Carter Community Court." The letters hand-brushed by a local muralist whose invoice came with a note. "Thank you for not knocking us down. At home, life learned its rhythms." Emily woke early to check the roses, palmed the smooth stone labeled Hope, and practiced new words in the window reflection before breakfast. Daniel traded night emails for lunchbox notes and knew the names of 3 daycare teachers and 2 worms in the garden. Evelyn, who had once measured a day by chore lists, began measuring by laughs and invented a new house job she announced with mock severity, "Keeper of the step stool." She polished it like silver, and Maya changed shape without changing at all. A packet arrived from northeastern Illinois with the kind of seal that makes a kitchen go quiet. Admission to finish her master's in early childhood development, tuition covered by a scholarship, with a line item Daniel hadn't paid for. He only connected the dots when Victoria Lane showed up at the back door with a pie and a shrug. "Tax-deductible heroics," Victoria said, eyes crinkling. "Try not to make me feel feelings about it." Maya turned the envelope in her hands. "It's too much." "It's a correction," Victoria said. "Not for you. For us." She cut herself a slice of pie like a person trying on soft edges and not hating the fit. Also, if you ever want a consulting gig writing 3-hands policies for our family-facing properties, call me before a nicer company does. They all understood what would come next. Before Maya could become anything else in Daniel's life, she could not be his employee. Boundaries had kept the house safe. They would keep the next shape honest. They hired a new housekeeper, a warm woman named Tasha who ironed like art and learned the moon book by heart in a week. Maya shifted to part-time hours for Emily, explicitly as a child development consultant under Dr. Patel's supervision, and to full-time student by fall. The contract was as clear as the kitchen windows Rachel had insisted on. No romance, no blurred lines, not while grades and grief and hearts were still fragile. On a bright Saturday in May, the block held its breath and then cheered. The community court opened with paper triangles strung between lampposts like a language everyone suddenly remembered how to read. A brass band from the high school marched in crooked joy. Kids chalked moons on the pavers. The legal clinic set up a table with a sign, "Ask us anything, even if you're scared." Daniel stood at the podium placed where 17 months earlier he'd have argued for demolition. He wore no tie. He did carry a note card which he didn't need. "This plaza is named for Rachel," he said, voice steady as construction steel, "because she taught me that kitchens and classrooms and corner lots can be holy if we treat them like they matter. It stands because a team of people chose story over shortcuts. I want to thank our partners," he glanced at Victoria, who lifted 2 fingers in a salute, "and our neighbors, and the people who taught my daughter to love triangles because they look like pizza in disguise." Laughter rippled the way water does when a breeze learns how. Emily tugged at his sleeve, and he leaned down. "Can I say something?" she asked, not whispering at all. "Always," he said, and lifted her to the mic. "My family is a home," she announced, small voice carrying like a bell. "Homes don't fall down if lots of hands hold them up." Applause swallowed the block. Maya stood off to the side, flower not on her sleeves today, but in the memory of 100 circles traced on a little back. Dr. Patel swiped at an eye with her thumb and blamed the wind. Evelyn clapped until her palms stung, and then pretended she hadn't. After the ribbon, cut with oversized scissors, Emily could barely lift. Marisol Alvarez brought Mateo over with a gift, a Polaroid snapped and shaken to life. 3 hands on one plate, taped crooked to a cardboard frame. On the bottom, in block letters, different shapes still the same. Summer folded in like a clean sheet. The building rose around the preserved brick, lobby floating above it on the transfer truss like a promise made visible. The daycare tried out the new plaza chalk grid and discovered hopscotch. Worked better when you added a feeling square. The clinic won 2 cases in a row for women who needed a fixed address to keep their children safe. Investors emailed Daniel words he'd never expected from them. Legacy, resilient, proud. In August, Rachel's court hosted a movie night. Families spread blankets. Evelyn handed out lemonade like an usher, who'd always wanted to work a theater. Maya arrived late from class with a stack of articles on trauma-informed classrooms and the kind of exhaustion that looks like purpose. She found Emily halfway to sleep on Daniel's shoulder and took the other side, the 3 of them making a small sturdy roof against the evening. Sometime after the credits, under a sky that had not gotten the memo about light pollution, Daniel walked Maya to the roses. The bushes were taller now, stubborn and alive, blooms the color of baseball stitching and sunrise. He reached into his pocket and took out a small velvet box that was not yet a ring. Inside lay Rachel's wedding band threaded on a chain. "I've carried this for months," he said. Not as an answer. As a question. Can a house hold 2 truths without breaking? Can love change shape and still be the same? Maya looked at the band, catching porch light like a quiet star. "Yes," she said, not pretending to need time she'd already taken. "If we keep telling the truth." "Then here's mine," he said, hands not quite steady. "You were the bridge. You are the secure base. When you finish your degree, when the last line is erased from the old contract and written into a new one, with you choosing the terms, will you let me ask the rest of the question?" She didn't make him say it. She stepped close enough for his heartbeat to understand and closed his fingers over the chain. "Ask me when I've earned my letters," she said, smile trembling and sure. "I already know the answer, but we'll do it right." They didn't kiss. They stood with their shoulders touching while the city exhaled around them, and that restraint felt less like waiting and more like respect grown to full height. Autumn colored the river copper. Maya juggled practicum hours and bedtime stories. Emily practiced writing Rachel in wobbly caps on index cards. Daniel learned the names of the construction crew and brought them coffee at dawn. Victoria sent a photo from an industry magazine with a headline that read, "Old bricks, new backbone." Underneath she'd scrawled, "You were right about heat, winter arrived like a clean ledger." On the shortest day of the year, the building opened. Tenants moved into glass that reflected brick, that sheltered classrooms that held kids who ran out at recess to count triangles on pavers that copied a girl's poster board moon. The church gym opened in the cantilevered air rights box and gave teenagers somewhere to be loud without getting in trouble for it. The alley egress glowed like a narrow poem with lights that made even hurried feet feel seen. And then, in a living room that had once been a museum of loss, under pendant lights that Rachel had chosen, and everyone now claimed, a family threw a small party for no reason they could name except this. They could. Tasha baked a lemon cake and oversalted the frosting on purpose. Evelyn brought out the good plates and called them brave. Dr. Patel arrived late, toasting with ginger ale and pride. Marisol and Mateo came with triangles cut from pizza and cardboard. Victoria texted a photo of her feet up in fuzzy socks with the caption, "Optics." Daniel lifted Emily and tapped a spoon to a glass. "House rules," he said, and nodded toward the card on the fridge. Emily read them, halting and proud. Brave first, optics second. 3 hands, 1 plate. Different shapes, still the same. "Add one," Maya said. Cheeks a little pink, eyes bright from finishing a semester with a grade that made the kitchen cheer. She handed Emily a marker. Emily wrote slowly, tongue peeking out in concentration. "Many hands, 1 home." They taped it below the others. The house seemed to stand a little taller without moving at all. Later, when the guests had gone and the dishwasher hummed, Daniel walked Maya to the back steps and, for the first time with no lines to blur and no contracts to protect, asked the rest of the question. She answered like a person who had spent a year learning the shape of yes. They kissed once carefully, the kind of kiss that does not edit the past but makes room for it at the table. Upstairs, Emily slept with a stone in her hand labeled joy. On the plaza, under the transfer truss that held up a lobby, that held up a tower, that held up a story, a new plaque caught the streetlight. "Many hands, 1 home," Rachel's name above it. Below, space for another, left blank tonight, not for absence, but for the way love writes itself in when it's ready. The moon rose into a sky that had room for changing shapes. In a city that measures everything, a man who once only counted square feet now counted breaths and brave plates and 12 feet of mercy. A woman who turned soap into language became the teacher she'd been all along. A child who had gone silent learned the word for what they'd built together and spoke it without fear. Home.